Hello, my name is Shane Dunn, and this is my presentation for peripheral nervous system. This is for my Bio 5015 class. I'm posting this to my YouTube channel because my students might find this useful. So first off, before we begin, let's talk about the difference of the CNS and the PNS. Let me get my marker. Okay. So the CNS is going to mainly be the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is going to be everything else. We're mainly going to focus on the motor side. So motor neurons are going to be able to things that cause movement, either the movement of muscles or glands. You can think of it like this because when you eat, your stomach has to press the food down, and when you press glands, you kind of squeeze the glands out. This then breaks down into two subcategories: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Most of this presentation will talk about autonomic, but I will briefly discuss somatic nervous system because this is muscle movement, which we'll discuss later on. So autonomic nervous system, the word autonomic sounds like automatic, which means it happens without control. This stuff happens without you thinking about it. So heart rate, breathing, digestion, all that stuff happens without you really thinking about it. It's part of motor, so things are being moving, like your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion of stomach, all that's motor. We have two flavors of the autonomic nervous system. We have sympathetic, and the key words, when you guys understand sympathetic, is like fight or flight is the big one. I'll say sometimes go, 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 go. And the big thing in this one right here is adrenaline. Adrenaline keeps the sympathetic nervous system going. The other flavor is parasympathetic. Para just means without sympathetic. So it's the exact opposite. It is going to be a good word for it is rest and digest. Also referred to as stop, stop, stop sometimes. And we're mainly going to use something akin to mushrooms. That might sound weird, but you'll see later on. So the sympathetic nervous system, here is a picture of the sympathetic nervous system. So it's the fight or flight. So all this comes off of the spinal cord. Okay? And interesting enough, all preganglia, and ganglia is just a grouping. So right here is a grouping of nerves called ganglia. All your sympathetic nervous systems have a short preganglionic fiber. So I'm going to change my color to green so you can see. From the spinal cord outwards, all of them, all your sympathetic, all except one, all go into this structure called a chain ganglia, which is a couple of inches away from your spine. From there, it goes into the postganglionic. So you have a short pre, long post-sympathetic. The only one that is different is one that goes straight on to the adrenal medulla. That right there does not stop at the chain ganglia, just straight on through. The reason being is the preganglionic fibers are myelinated, while post are not. So sympathetic nervous system, that's fight or flight, is actually very slow. The majority of it is actually unmyelinated substances. Parasympathetic is a bit different. So this is rest and digest. They have a long pre and a short post. So they go all the way from the spinal cord to the target organ, and once they're at the target organ, then they break off and fire. So parasympathetic is much, much faster than sympathetic. And it might seem weird about this, but we actually spend most of our time in parasympathetic. So let's draw some stuff, because I think the best way of learning these structures is to draw. So we're talking about somatic. Somatic, you may have learned this already, or we will learn this later on, is going to be muscle movement. Somatic means body. So we're going to draw these structures of this. So we have one coming off the spine, and it's going to go here. You have a ganglia. And then we have, yep, here's our pre, and here's our post. So the neurotransmitter released in the sympathetic nervous system is always, always, always going to be acetylcholine. It's always ACH, acetylcholine. Always, 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 no matter what, it's always acetylcholine. But this is what the somatic looks like. And I want you to know this because we're going to ask some test questions to compare somatic with sympathetic and parasympathetic. So you got to know all three. But this is what the branch kind of looks like. The pre and post, usually the same length. They sometimes have a ganglion in the middle, which is the ganglionic fiber right here. That's what it looks like. Nothing too big. Let's talk about sympathetic. So first off, it's going to have a short pre, so very, very short. I draw that by drawing a short that. And then here's your ganglia. It has a long post. Okay. Now, well, you know, as a little secret, every single time between the pre to the post, you always release ACH. No matter what, you always release acetylcholine. It's always after the post in which things become different. So, what is a neurotransmitter the sympathetic's going to release? Well, it's a hormone you may have heard of before. What hormone causes people to go crazy and get super strong and super juiced with things? That is adrenaline. So it's going to release adrenaline. But in this class, since this is a college level class, we're not going to say adrenaline. We're going to say epinephrine or epi, like an EpiPen. Sometimes it might refer to as neuroepinephrine, neuroepi. They are the same thing. They pretty much do the exact same thing. But this is norepinephrine and epinephrine. Its receptors are special as well. You have two flavors of receptors. You have alpha receptors and you have beta receptors. We use the Greek letters of alpha and we use the Greek letters of beta. From that, we actually have two different types, alpha 1 and alpha 2. Beta 1 and beta 2. Depending on what this norepinephrine responds to, you'll get a different response. Now, this is the fight or flight. So if I go backwards a little bit, we look at the organ attacks. So if your sympathetic nervous system targets the heart, for example, fight or flight, it's going to increase heart rate. Salivary glands, it's actually going to decrease this because do you need to digest things in your mouth? No. Increase lungs. Decrease all of digestion. All this goes down because you don't need to digest food. Decrease bladder. We'll not talk about genitalia because that's a weird one. We'll talk about more reproductive. Eyesight's actually going to increase. You're actually going to have increased sweating. Everything you think of you need to run very much or happen during exercises happens the same in the sympathetic nervous system. Now let's talk about alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, and beta 2. Alpha 1, the best way of thinking about it is if you increase alpha 1, you're going to increase blood pressure. You're going to cause the blood vessels to vasoconstrict, which is going to increase blood pressure. Well, alpha 2 is going to do the exact opposite. Alpha 2 is actually going to decrease blood pressure and cause vasodilation in some places. Now, you might be asking why you want to vasoconstrict and vasodilate at the same time. Well, what happens here is blood in our body has oxygen, which is fuel, there's ATP and glucose. So you're actually going to vasoconstrict towards all your digestive organs, all the organs you don't need, so you get less blood flow. And you're going to vasodilate or open up to all the organs that need all that extra blood flow. And because your digestive systems actually overall take up most of your body, you have an increased overall blood pressure. They're both activate. Beta 1, the way to think about this, is you have one heart. So this is going to increase heart rate and the strength of contraction, also known as chronotropy. Beta 2 is going to cause an increase in breathing rates to help you breathe. It also has a weird thing it does with the uterus. It stops uterine contraction. Now, if you do not know, only women have uteruses, and uterines only contract when a woman is giving birth. So if the uterine is contracting, it means birth is happening. We actually want to stop uterine contraction in the sympathetic state because if you're running for your life, do you want to give birth to a baby that takes time and energy? No, you stop that for another time. So here we go. What would you give a patient with hypertension? Hypertension basically just means high blood pressure. So the patient already has high blood pressure. you want to decrease his blood pressure, right? So you would give an alpha 2 agonist, which just means you're going to cause the increase, you're going to cause the same effect alpha 2 would only have. You'd also give an alpha, you also could give an alpha 1 antagonist. An antagonist does the exact opposite. So normally alpha 1 increases blood pressure, an antagonist of alpha 1 will decrease it. What about hypertension? What's the exact opposite? You want to give increase alpha 1 and decrease alpha 2. Well, just have cardiac arrest, right? Or you see watch Grey's Anatomy, they push epinephrine. Well, epinephrine will increase beta 1, which will increase heart rate. What about asthma? Beta 2. You want to increase beta 2, you give it agonists for this stuff. Patients can give labor 3 months. If you don't know, that's pretty early. We want to not have that. We want to try going at least a month before the due date for a preemie. So we're going to increase beta 2. Parasympathetic. So exact same thing as before, except now we're going to have a long preganglionic fiber. I do apologize for my bad drawing. I'm drawing with a mouse. And a short post. Again, we're going to have acetylcholine here and here. And actually, interesting enough, we're going to have acetylcholine down here. Now, I didn't really mention it with the motor, the somatic, but the receptor was a nicotinic receptor. Here, the receptor is a muscarinic receptor. Just try and draw it like this, and it's going to be a muscarinic receptor. So muscarinic, what does muscarinic sound like? Muscarinic sounds like mushroom. Interesting enough, mushrooms have lots of muscarine in it, so they actually activate this. So your parasympathetic, going back to the parasympathetic, it's going to cause a decrease in heartbeat. It's going to cause a decrease in breathing. You're going to increase salivating. We're going to increase digestion, increase the ability to pee and such. You're also going to constrict the pupils. The reason being you're constricting the pupils is you're making it harder for light to get in because you should be going to sleep, rest, and digest. Sympathetic will actually increase pupils because it's going to allow you to see more light. That's pretty much it. Now, biggest test question you'll see at GCU is about this. So we have a patient, you might know him. Mario usually eats a mushroom like this. That mushroom actually has a real life indicator called a fly adrenergic mushroom. These mushrooms are highly hallucinogenic, and sometimes patients will eat these mushrooms. Now, sometimes patients are not mushroom collectors, so they might not know what this mushroom looks like. Hey, this mushroom looks normal, let's eat it. Well, the fly adrenergic mushroom actually has lots and lots of muscarine in it. So let's see what muscarine does. Well, muscarine will cause a decrease in breathing, a decrease in heart rate, a very much increase in digestion, a very much increase in this and this, in salivating, increase in pupils. When it very much increases more than normal, your pupils will constrict way more than normal, almost leading to a kind of temporary blindness. Your saliva, you start salivating so much, it's hard to contain. You start drooling. Your heart starts slowing down, and your breathing starts slowing down. Some people, usually when they're hallucinating on this mushroom, feel like they're dying. Your stomach can increase to the point where you start defecating and have diarrhea, and vomiting can become a doom. You also can have your bladder, which means you can start peeing yourself, which is not good. That's why Mario is not happy. Now let's put it all together. You can see it all together now. I'm going to draw somatic, sympathetic, and parasympathetic. And I like drawing it because this is how I see it in my head. So first up is somatic. And I will draw its receptor. I do apologize. So about the same length. And you're going to have a nicotinic receptor. I'll do that in black. Nicotinic receptors. Okay, over here I'll draw the sympathetic So you're gonna have a short pre, a long post. And I'll indicate that with this. Here we're gonna have a long pre and a short post. Okay. Next, switch over to my blue, and we'll draw blue circles wherever acetylcholine is used. Okay. Next, I'm going to use my red to indicate where androgens or norepinephrine and epinephrine are used. So there we go. I'll use orange. We have alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, and beta 2. And then we have muscarine, which is purple. Now, the toughest questions I have my students kind of wonder, because it's not it makes sense, they don't think about it. You have nicotinic receptors here, 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 and here. So what happens if you overdose on nicotine? So what happens, say, for example, someone puts a bunch of patches on, or they smoke a bunch of cigarettes in a small amount of time? Well, you're going to have an increase in somatic abilities, which means your muscles are going to contract, which you're going to spastic paralysis. Well, you're also going to have an increase in your sympathetic and an increase in your parasympathetic. Whoa, what's going on there? Well, you're going to have an increased heart rate, increased breathing, which sounds weird, but you're also going to have vomiting and saliva and diarrhea and urination. You're going to have symptoms from all three. So that's one of the toughest questions I'll ask you is what happens if you overdose on nicotine, because nicotine is used in all of them. But that is pretty much the autonomic nervous system. Here are the references I have. Hopefully it was helpful. If it was, please watch more videos. If not, please reach out to me. But thank you. Have a great day.